everyone, Ren here. The Sundance Film Festival is one of the most famous and respected film festivals in the country. Like most things this year, the festival was forced into a very difficult choice: radically change the experience of their program or close down for the year. Fortunately, they chose the former, and I was able to virtually attend my first ever Sundance Film Festival. I was only really able to afford 6 tickets, but I liked all of the ones I saw nonetheless, and overall I had a very good time. Today I wanted to talk about the films that I saw at Sundance this year. The first movie I saw at Sundance was Prano Bailey Bond's Censor. Censor is an absolutely wild ride from start to finish, following a film censor named Enid in 1980s Britain during the video nasty hysteria. Censor is both a riveting atmospheric psychological horror, a fascinatingly detailed period piece, and one of the more fascinating metatextual commentaries on the horror genre since 1994's Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It certainly doesn't let the more harmful aspects of these films, particularly their exploitation of women, slide, but it also serves as an indictment of censorship as a means of maintaining control. Similarly to how Enid, played brilliantly by Nia Malgar, commits herself unhealthily to her job and her quest as a means through which to regain a sense of control after repressing an incredibly traumatic event, so too is society attempting to exercise its more sinister forms of expression in an attempt to insinuate its own sense of control. But while there is an exploitative side to horror, there is also a cathartic one. There is darkness in everyone, and horror is a healthy outlet for that. There's a lot of fascinating ideas on display here, and the craft is just stunning. The period elements are gorgeously detailed, and the cinematography is gorgeous and vibrant, with vivid colors in the horror segments contrasting sharply with the drabness of the period aspect. The film really kept me on the edge of my seat throughout, and I think it goes without saying that this is a very gory film, but it also has quite a lot of fun with itself, particularly towards the end. The plot doesn't come together quite as well as I'd have liked, but this film is just so confident and interesting of an experience that I really think it can mark Prano Bailey Bond as a new strong voice in independent horror cinema. There's a lot about this film that'll be divisive, but I was really into it, and I'd love to see it in theaters someday if it ever gets a theatrical release. Cryptozoo is one of the most unique films I've ever seen. It's a globe-trotting thriller about rescuing cryptids from black market exploitation, meshed with a beautifully emotional drama about the ethics of animal conservation in zoos and the beautiful yet fragile nature of idealism, seasoned with a dash of 1960s period themes of counterculture and anti-war protest, all animated in one of the most singularly unique styles of hand-drawn animation I've ever seen. Director Dash Saw led an independent team in creating this passion project 5 years in the making. The film does get a little bit muddled in its themes at times, I feel. Sometimes it felt like it was treating the cryptids as a sort of other in society, and other times they felt like they were just animals. But ultimately the film is about exploitation in both senses, and both of these tie in very well to the overall countercultural aspects. This film is brimming with emotion and personality and heart, and every creature design and character is beautifully rendered. I don't want to say too much about the plot because it's really something you have to see to believe. I really hope this goes on to gain a wider audience because it really is something special. It also does an excellent job of making an adult-oriented animation without sacrificing the wonder and beauty the medium is uniquely capable of. The third film I saw was another midnight premiere, this time for the Swedish psychological thriller Knocking, following a mentally ill woman trying to find the source of a strange knocking sound that only she seems to be able to hear. Of all the films I saw at Sundance, this feels the most like it could have been better as a 20 to 30 minute short. Its premise is just so simple that I'm not really sure what 78 minutes was able to give it that a half an hour couldn't. That being said, what we have isn't bad at all. It's a tightly made, incredibly suspenseful, claustrophobic thriller about mental illness and gaslighting. Frida Kempf, previously known for her documentaries, brings us her debut feature, and it's obvious that in terms of craft she knows what she's doing. The camera work and cinematography are simple yet excellently creative, and knowing that they didn't have a lot of equipment at their disposal makes these shots all the more impressive. The other piece that makes up this film's quality is star Cecilia Moloko, whose performance is mesmerizing and incredibly emotional. She gives it her all and really captures the protagonist's spiral in heartbreaking detail. That's all I really have to say about this one. It doesn't have quite enough meat on its bones, but it never feels boring or bloated either. For what it is, it still works really well, and I hope to see more from this team in the future. Sally Aitken's documentary Playing with Sharks, following the life of renowned marine conservationist Valerie Taylor, was one of my festival highlights. This inspiring, emotional, and enlightening work follows her career and accomplishments, working with and studying sharks, using interviews with her from the present as well as some of the thousands of hours of camera footage of her work documented by her and her late husband. I had not really known about the Taylors before watching this, but afterwards I can say that I find them truly fascinating and inspirational. The documentary covers all sorts of aspects about Valerie's life, from her professional accomplishments to her personal passions, to her marriage with ex-world champion spearfisher turned conservationist and documentarian Ron Taylor. She may not be as well renowned outside of her field as she deserves to be, but you'd be surprised how often she pops up elsewhere, as she dedicated her life to the demystification, study, and protection of these fantastic and misunderstood creatures, even as pop culture increasingly turned against them. Nowadays, there are only about 10% of sharks left because of their destruction at the hands of humanity. It's a sad, sobering reality, but as long as there are any left, there's still hope. Through its striking, beautiful images and emotional story, Playing with Sharks aims to change our perspective on these misunderstood beasts and makes a plea to the animal lover in all of us. For the most part, it succeeds. For the penultimate film, we have the incredibly unique Prisoners of the Ghostland. Japanese director Shion Sono is known for his vast catalog of eccentric and controversial films, such as Suicide Club and Love Exposure. Prisoners of the Ghostland is his English-language debut starring Nicolas Cage, whose recent career trajectory has him right on track to star in this absolutely buck-wild film. I just have no idea how to even talk about this without spoiling everything. Not that there's even that much to spoil. This movie is so utterly insane that I feel like I'm not even close to its level to be able to understand what it's trying to say, if it's trying to say anything at all. There's motifs about time, freedom, prisoners, heroes, etc. that makes it feel like there's a message, but whenever I tried to ask the movie what it meant, it just kind of scowled at me and retorted, "Well, what do you mean? What does anything mean?" The set design and cinematography is what really makes this film shine. It bills itself as a samurai western post-apocalyptic satirical thriller, and oh my god does it capitalize on every single one of those words. This movie is like if Akira Kurosawa directed Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven while high on cocaine. If all of that sounds incoherent, that's because it absolutely is, but if you've ever wanted to see Nicolas Cage fight samurai in front of an old saloon in a nuclear wasteland, this is the film for you. I'm not really sure that it comes together in a super satisfying way, but it's still really fascinating to watch, especially with the unique visual world that Sono and company have created here. I really hope to see it again in the future, hopefully in theaters, so I can decide just how I feel about it. There's something about teenage coming-of-age stories dealing with grief and isolation that I find myself drawn to. With my last film of Sundance 2020, I decided to add another entry to the ever-expanding list of warm-hearted coming-of-age dramedies that have made me cry. Marvelous in the Black Hole is hardly an innovative take on the genre as far as how it tells its story, but it uses a unique point of view to keep things fresh, and honestly it's just a very heartwarming story overall. Oddly enough, this film bears striking similarities to 2020's Over the Moon. Namely, both follow Chinese teenage girls who have recently lost their mothers and who are both struggling to move on with the rest of their families. Both have fathers who are looking to remarry, and both show intense bitterness to their prospective stepmothers and have to learn to heal and grow. Both stories prominently feature the legend of Chang'e, the Chinese goddess of the moon, in some way. Where the two differ, of course, is in how they deal with their subject matter. Over the Moon is an animated fairy tale, whereas Marvelous in the Black Hole is a grounded live-action coming-of-age story that explores creativity and personal expression, particularly in the form of sleight-of-hand magic, as a means through which to turn your pain into something beautiful. Marvelous in the Black Hole is suffused with an absolutely delightful, playful energy. The film doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it's constantly pulling affectionately from different inspirations, from cartoons to midnight movies to, of course, stage magic and Chinese mythology. It's all grounded, though, in the charming and lovely relationship between the troubled young Sammy and the older magician Margot. The two don't seem to have much in common at all at first, but as the film goes on, they both make a place for themselves in the hearts of each other and the audience. Before I go, there's another film I wanted to give a shout out to. This wasn't a Sundance film, but I really wanted to talk about it, and I'm not sure when I'll get the chance to. Last month, I got a chance to see a virtual screening of Sebastian Lifshitz' Little Girl, a verite documentary following a French family fighting for their young trans daughter to be accepted at school. This film first premiered at the Berlin International Film Festival in 2020, but hasn't yet gotten any sort of release in the US outside of virtual festival screenings here and there. Honestly, this is an early contender for Best of the Year. I cried watching this film. It was such a tender, intimate portrayal of family and acceptance, and has nothing but true empathy for its subject. The film is beautifully shot, and the central subject, Sasha, is just a delight to spend time with. I would die to see this little girl happy. The film doesn't shy away from the hardships and cruelties transgender children have to face in the world, but that's not really the focus either. Little Girl is primarily about the fight to be accepted as your authentic self and the joys and wonders that sort of family can bring. The only problem I have with it is that it doesn't really do much to challenge the gender norms Sasha is fighting to be accepted in. It's mostly a binary story that uses rather simplified language like trapped in a boy's body and whatnot. Overall, this is a film I fell head over heels with, and I can't wait to watch it again one day. This is definitely one to keep an eye out for. Overall, I had a good time at this year's Sundance. It wasn't quite what I expected for my first outing at the prestigious festival, but given the circumstances, that's to be expected. All of the films I watched were unique and entertaining, and I picked up plenty of films to watch out for as the year keeps going. That's all for now. I hope you're inspired to keep an eye out for some of these films. Let me know what you think of all of this in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one in the future. See you!